Welcome back to 100 Years of History. In our last episode, we watched as Nikola Tesla's final secrets were seized by the FBI, the violent conclusion of a life spent in conflict. But what financial betrayal, what colossal mistake, actually led the world's greatest mind to that lonely, forgotten hotel room? This story isn't about physics. It's about a war of souls fought between two titans, Edison, who sold the light, and Tesla, who wanted to gift it. It all began with a simple promise. In 1885, Tesla was working for Thomas Edison, improving his inefficient DC motors and generators. Edison, ever the shrewd businessman, offered Tesla a staggering $50,000, over $1 million in today's money if he could solve the problem. Tesla, fueled by coffee, little sleep, and sheer genius, worked relentlessly for months. He not only fixed the design but redesigned the entire system, creating immense value for Edison's company. When Tesla went to collect his promised reward, Edison laughed. He dismissed the offer as a joke, saying, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." He offered a meager raise instead. For Tesla, this wasn't just about money. It was a profound betrayal of trust and respect. He resigned on the spot, walking away from a stable job and into a period of extreme hardship, even digging ditches to survive. This moment ignited a fire in Tesla, pushing him to prove his own alternating current system was superior. It was the first major financial blow, a lesson learned in the brutal intersection of innovation and commerce. But this was just the beginning of his financial troubles. The true turning point, the decision that would cement his fate, came a few years later. After securing his own patents for the AC system, Tesla partnered with George Westinghouse. This was the start of the War of the Currents, a fierce battle against Edison's established DC empire. Westinghouse agreed to pay Tesla a handsome sum for his patents plus a royalty $2.504 every horsepower of electricity sold. Think about that. As a sea power spread across the globe, this royalty would have made Tesla not just a millionaire, but quite possibly the world's first billionaire. He would have been wealthier than Edison, Rockefeller, and Carnegie combined. But as the war with Edison intensified, Westinghouse's company teetered on the brink of collapse. Wall Street bankers, nervous about the risky venture, pressured Westinghouse to get rid of the costly royalty contract with Tesla. They saw it as an unacceptable financial drain. Westinghouse, an honorable man, went to Tesla and laid out the dire situation. He explained that if the company went under, Tesla's AC dream would die with it. Here, Tesla faced an impossible choice: his personal fortune, a wealth beyond imagination, or the future of his technology, the dream of lighting up the world for everyone. In a moment of incredible self-sacrifice, Nikola Tesla took his contract with Westinghouse, the one guaranteeing him billions, and tore it to pieces. He relinquished all future royalties, asking for nothing in return but that his partner and his dream survive. He saved Westinghouse and ensured the victory of AC power, the very system that powers our lives today. But in doing so, he sealed his own financial doom. He gave away a fortune to give the world the future. Was he a genius, a fool, or a true martyr for humanity? The answer is heartbreaking. He was a man who valued his vision for humanity more than any personal gain. A decision that left him to die alone and in debt, but one that allows us to turn on the lights today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from history.
The great rivalry wasn't a fair fight between two brilliant minds. It was a brutal ideological clash between two opposing visions for the future. You see, Thomas Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, believed the goal of invention was to monetize every spark of ingenuity, to put a meter on every filament and charge a price for every flicker of light. His approach was direct current, or DC. It was safe, it was profitable, and crucially, it was limited. It couldn't be efficiently transmitted more than about 1 mile before power loss made the whole venture pointless. Edison was selling a caged light bulb. Tesla, on the other hand, arrived in America not seeking wealth, but seeking to gift humanity his magnum opus, alternating current, or AC. He saw electricity not as a commodity to be hoarded, but as a boundless natural force, much like the air we breathe. This core difference, profit versus purity, set the stage for what became known as the War of the Currents, a period where innovation was weaponized. Tesla briefly worked for Edison, a partnership destined to implode. He claimed Edison owed him the astronomical sum of $50,000 for improving Edison's flawed DC dynamos. When Tesla demanded payment, the story goes that Edison laughed, allegedly quipping, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." This was the second great insult in a life that would become defined by betrayal, but it gave Tesla the fuel to become Edison's ultimate rival. When George Westinghouse, a far more visionary industrialist, offered Tesla the equivalent of about $600,000 for his fundamental AC patents, plus a royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity sold, it seemed Tesla had finally found a partner who valued his genius. It was a deal that would have made Tesla the richest man on Earth within a decade. But as the war of the currents intensified, Edison launched a vicious, horrifying public relations campaign against AC, funding the electrocution of stray animals using AC current to scare the public into believing it was deadly. Westinghouse was suddenly on the brink of financial collapse, drowning in debt and facing bankruptcy. And this is where the story pivots from mere rivalry to noble sacrifice. Westinghouse approached Tesla with a plea, not a demand. Tear up the royalty contract, or the company, and the future of AC would die. Tesla, recognizing that his life's work, the superior technology, the unselfish current, was at stake, performed an act of financial suicide. He tore up the contract, destroying what would have become billions of dollars in future wealth. He saved AC, but he sacrificed his financial future and guaranteed he would spend the rest of his life dependent on the very financial titans he opposed. Was he a genius, a fool, or a man of principle so profound that he literally preferred the success of his idea over his own wealth? The question of what would have happened if he had simply said, "No," is one that still echoes in the halls of finance. With AC victorious but Tesla personally defeated, he turned his gaze upward, toward the heavens. His next obsession was not about powering cities, but about connecting them without wires. He envisioned a world where information, images, and power itself could be broadcast through the air, received by anyone, anywhere. This was not science fiction. This was the Wardenclyffe Tower. On Long Island, New York, funded by the financial giant J.P. Morgan, Tesla began constructing a colossal mushroom-shaped tower, a magnificent structure designed to be the first node in a global wireless system. It was meant to be his ultimate gift to humanity: free, limitless energy and information for all. But Morgan's intentions were, once again, rooted in profit, not progress. He believed he was funding a transatlantic wireless telegraph system, a direct competitor to the existing cable network that would make him even richer. When Morgan discovered Tesla's true, far more radical ambition, to provide energy that couldn't be metered, couldn't be sold, he was horrified. He saw not a utopia, but a direct threat to his entire empire, which was built on controlling resources like coal, oil, and copper. The moment another inventor, Guglielmo Marconi, successfully sent a single letter S across the Atlantic using a much simpler, far less ambitious system, one that still required wires at both ends and could easily be commercialized, Morgan had his excuse. He pulled the plug. All funding for Wardenclyffe was cut off instantly. Tesla pleaded, he wrote desperate letters, he explained that Marconi had used 17 of his own patents to achieve his feat. But it was useless. Morgan was done. The financial world turned its back on Tesla, labeling him a dreamer, a madman. The magnificent Wardenclyffe Tower, the symbol of a future that could have been, stood as a derelict skeleton for years, a haunting monument to suppressed genius. Eventually, it was dismantled and sold for scrap during World War I to pay off Tesla's mounting debts. He had envisioned a world connected, and instead he was left utterly alone, his greatest dream reduced to rubble. This pattern of suppression, of genius being stifled by greed, became the tragic rhythm of Tesla's life. He would invent, propose a revolutionary idea that threatened an existing industry, and then be systematically starved of the resources needed to bring it to life. He conceived of radar decades before its official invention, but the U.S. War Department dismissed it. He built remote-controlled boats and vehicles in the 1890s, demonstrating them to stunned crowds at Madison Square Garden, only to be laughed off as a magician. He spoke of geothermal energy, solar power, and even what we now call particle beam weapons. Ideas so far ahead of their time that they were seen as the ravings of a mind untethered from reality. Each time, the system pushed back. The gatekeepers of capital, men like Morgan and the other titans of industry, were not interested in fundamentally changing the world in ways that threatened their control. They were interested in incremental improvements they could own and sell. Tesla's vision was too big, too generous, too disruptive. He wasn't just inventing products. He was trying to redesign the very infrastructure of human civilization. And for the powers that be, that was the most dangerous idea of all. They didn't just want to ignore him. They needed to erase him. His name was slowly scrubbed from the history books. Edison, the savvy businessman, became the face of American innovation. Marconi, the commercializer, got the Nobel Prize. And Tesla? He was relegated to the footnotes, remembered, if at all, as a bizarre eccentric who fell in love with a pigeon. Think about that. The man who designed the modern world, the engine that powers every device you own, was deliberately cast as a caricature. This wasn't a simple case of a brilliant but unmarketable inventor. This was a systematic campaign to silence a voice that spoke of a different future, a future where power, both electrical and societal, was decentralized and available to all. The suppression of Nikola Tesla wasn't just the failure to fund a few projects, it was the active betrayal of humanity's potential. In his later years, Tesla became a recluse, living in a series of New York hotels, his mind still ablaze with ideas but his spirit crushed by decades of resistance. He would spend his days in the park, feeding the pigeons he saw as his only true friends. He claimed he could communicate with one particular white pigeon, that she was the love of his life, and that she visited him to tell him she was dying. It's easy to dismiss this as madness, the final decline of a once great mind, but perhaps there's another way to see it. Perhaps, after a lifetime of being betrayed by humans, by the very society he sought to elevate, he found more solace, more loyalty, and more genuine connection in the simple, unconditional company of a bird. It was a quiet, lonely end for the man who lit the world. He died alone in his hotel room on January 7, 1943, at the age of 86, but his story doesn't end there. Almost immediately after his death was announced, agents from the Office of Alien Property, a division of the U.S. government, swooped in and seized all of his belongings. Trunks full of research notes, diagrams, and prototypes were confiscated, classified as top secret, and taken away. For decades, the contents of these documents remained one of the most tantalizing mysteries in the history of science. What was in those files? Did they contain the secrets to limitless energy, anti-gravity technology, the infamous death ray that Tesla himself had spoken of? The official story is that after a review, his papers were deemed to be purely speculative and of no practical value. But the questions linger. Why would the government act so swiftly to seize the papers of a supposedly washed-up inventor? Why classify them for decades? This final act of suppression cemented Tesla's legacy as a man whose genius was so potent, so potentially world-altering, that even in death, the establishment was afraid of what he knew. His life wasn't just a story of invention. It was a war for the soul of the future, a war that, in many ways, we are still fighting today. The battle between open progress and controlled profit, between a gifted world and a souled one, continues. And at the heart of it all is the ghost of Nikola Tesla, a man who saw the future and paid the price for trying to give it away for free.